Howdy and welcome back. We're going to continue our discussion here by moving into plain text files. And before we get into that, let's say that, okay, in my program, I'm representing, I don't know, movie objects. So let's say we have movies, and let's say some of the fields we're looking to store is going to be an ID for that movie in integer form, followed by the movie title, and say a string, maybe release date, as well. Let's keep it easy and just do another string here. And let's say the final thing we're looking to store is going to be a description, also in string form. So let's say we have this structured way of storing movie objects in our program. So we have things like, I don't know, movie 1, movie 2, and I don't know, they're storing some sort of data. And we're now at the point of, wanting to close down our application. How can we write our collection of movies out into persistent storage so that later we could go ahead and reopen up our application and load these objects back into their in-memory representation? One way to do this is going to be writing these objects out in plain text file in a structured sort of way. So what is a plain text file? It's going to be one of the simplest ways that we have to store persistent data. In fact, in this class, we've already worked with structured plain text files in the CSV format. The idea of this format is simply to store data as plain text with each line of the file corresponding to one record. So in the case of our movie example, we might have 5 movies. Each movie would be written out to one line of the file, and our text file would have 5 lines, with each line corresponding to one movie record. Therefore, each line is going to be composed of different fields containing the values of the different variables comprising a respective record. So in this case, we're somehow going to, on each line of our file, let's say we have 5, should have done 3, would have been less to draw. But okay, let's say we have 5 movie objects out there in memory. Well, how can we divvy up each line per se to store these 4 attributes or characteristics? So we're going to have to somehow partition this out to say, okay, there's an ID portion, title, release date, and then description. So how can we do that on each line? How can we create these sets of fields? Well, there's going to be a couple of different ways to do that when we're talking about plain text files. The first one is going to be to use a delimited format, which we've all had experience with at this point in the class because we have introduced this concept of a CSV file. I believe you've read from them. You should have written to them as well. So we have some kind of basic understanding of how they work. And if you recall, what's going to essentially happen in a delimited format such as CSV is we'll have that idea of each record being on one line. So if we look at this movie example, we might have an ID, title. I guess I left out rating, but I'm not going to go back and update it. A release date and description. So let's say our in-memory representation of these objects has these 5 fields. Okay, how do we get this into a plain text delimited format? Well, if we were to write that out in, say, CSV, we could go ahead and write each record, and we could always specify a header if we'd like to. So the first line could be, hey, this is what the fields are for, with each additional line being the actual records that we're interested in. Okay, so if each line is a record, how do we denote these different fields? Well, we can use a delimiter which will essentially be a special character that is going to be used to separate the individual fields. So in the CSV format, we essentially have the ID field, which would be all the characters up to the first comma. And then after that comma, we'll be getting into the next field, which in this case is going to be the title field. So we're reading all the way up. And until we hit that delimiter, we're still in the title field. However, once we've reached it, we now know, based on this format, that we're moving into the rating field. So we continue this reading process until we arrive at the next delimiter, so the next comma. And at that point, okay, continuing this process, we're in the next field. It must be a release date because we know the structure of this file. And this is why structured format is so important. If you didn't know what each of these fields, what data was stored with them, it would be very difficult to kind of go through and interpret this. Because we've laid this file out in a way where we're saying, okay, the first field corresponds to this attribute, the second to that. Our program can make assumptions when we're reading it back into memory going, okay, first field's ID, 1, okay. Now we're in the title, so I need to get this title into a movie object. So Gone with the Wind would be ahead and assigned to that attribute of our in-memory representation, and so on and so forth. And in this example here, we'd continue all the way on, reading up to our description. So one of the nice things of using this delimited format is we don't have to make any assumptions kind of about how long is a title going to be. We can just read characters until we hit the delimiter. Likewise, how long is the description going to be? I don't know. Maybe it's a movie you like, so you write a lot longer description, or one that you're very opinionated of. So that, as a consequence, you're writing more. Or maybe it's something that, wasn't that interesting. So it's a short description, or you didn't watch it and you're, paraphrasing some sort of review that your friend gave you over the phone. Well, whatever it is, notice here we just keep reading delimiter, 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 and the characters between those two delimiters would go ahead and comprise the field, and it could be kind of as long as we're able to store, per se. And notice here at the end of the line, the delimiter isn't going to be a comma, it's going to be a line feed. And when we hit that line feed, guess what? We know we've read this entire record. Now let's go ahead and contrast this with another common plain text file format, which is going to be fixed width format. I'm not going to get into this too much today, but you will be able to make a connection with the fixed width format as we're kind of discussing here in plain text with the binary format that we will be discussing in a forthcoming lesson. In the fixed width format, fields within a record are going to be allocated essentially by a fixed number of characters. So if we go back to our movie example, and let's say we were serializing, so writing out the Gone with the Wind movie to our plain text file using fixed width format, remember that our in-memory representation is going to have 5 attributes. We're going to assign an ID to that movie, a title to the movie, a rating, a release date, as well as some sort of description. Now, to get that into memory, we'd begin writing a file, plain text file here. And we'd essentially allocate 1 record per line, similar to the delimited format. However, on that line, a specific number of characters are going to be set aside for each field. So in the example that I've set up here, we could store a collection of movies in this format with 1 movie per line in our plain text file. Corresponding to 1 movie that is in our collection of movies within our application. We could allocate essentially 4 characters to the ID. So we could go ahead and say, as we're interpreting this file, if we were to deserialize it to make sense of it, the first 4 characters that we're going to read would correspond to the ID. The next 25 characters in this example would correspond to the title. So boom, you read 25, and whatever's there is your title. And I'm using the underscore to essentially represent here a white space. So we might not use all of the characters within a given field, but we'd still need to include some sort of spacing there so that we could get into the adjacent field. So in this case, Gone with the Wind is a couple characters short. So with white spaces, I can go ahead and pad that field so that we can use the full precision of 25 characters and then get into the adjacent field, which is rating. And we've allocated, 2 characters to rating And then directly adjacent to that, we continue this process with, okay, here's the release date. It's 10 characters. And finally, we're going to close out this format, this structured format, with 40 characters for the description. So one nice thing about fixed width format is we know exactly how many characters should be on a given line. And when we talk about or get into our example with the CSV format, we'll see some of the implications of not having a fixed width per line when it comes to, say, updating specific records. However, one of the issues with the fixed width format here would then be, what if I get it wrong in terms of my width of a specific field? Like, what if 40 characters was inadequate to describe the description? We can't run over that because our structure of this format in our program, if we were to deserialize this file, would be expecting exactly 40 characters for the description, and anything over that would become problematic. And we'll see kind of why that is when we talk a little bit about binary files here. But essentially, if you're wanting to go back and write to this file, everything's kind of, you don't have like this space or any extra space. These records are right next to one another. So if you wanted to go overflow this 40 characters, you'd actually end up into the next line, because directly after that 40, there's going to be a line feed. And then it's not like in the file, this is actually on another line. It's line feed, and then that record, Casablanca's, right after it. So it's like line feed 2. So if we go back to write to this record and we say, okay, well, we need more than 40 characters, we'll see we're going to start getting into this other line, and essentially we're going to corrupt our file. So fixed width is, we'll see some perks to it, but it's also imperfect as well. So with that brief discussion on plain text files, the delimited format versus the fixed width format, let's go ahead and get an example into serializing some actual movie objects from an application to the CSV format. And then once we've gone through this, we'll go ahead and finish up our discussion by just reflecting on some potential advantages of using plain text files to store our objects in persistent storage, as well as some disadvantages of doing so.